Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're joining me today because, well, we are about to unpack a history that totally upends how we think about something we use literally every single day. We're diving headfirst into the hidden, honestly mind-bending history of money. We're going to look closely at the historical records and the foundational research to figure out what money actually is, way beyond the paper in your wallet or those numbers on your screen. Let's get right into it.
To kick things off, I want you to picture the classic creation story of money. I mean, we've all heard it, right? You imagine this primitive, kind of frictionless barter system. Say you have cows, but you really want some cooking pots. But the person with the pots doesn't want your cows, they want chickens. It's a complete logistical nightmare. And so, the story goes, to fix this messy situation, people just mutually agreed to use a simple medium of exchange, like, shiny pieces of silver or gold, just to make trading easier. But I gotta ask you, did money really just replace barter? Is that actually how history happened? If you look at the universally accepted creation myth, contemporary economists often emphasize that money provides the liquidity that allows individuals to move beyond barter. That's the standard story, right? That money naturally just bubbled up from the market because finding someone who wanted exactly what you had was just too rare. People supposedly started cutting precious metals into coins purely for convenience, making money this entirely neutral, frictionless little instrument.
Well, history actually dramatically shatters this myth. It completely flips it on its head. When we contrast this imagined history, villagers trading cows for pots and suddenly inventing shiny coins, with historical reality, it's a totally different ballgame. Historically, money actually emerged as a unit of account specifically designed to measure debt and tax obligations. It wasn't about replacing barter at all. It was really about keeping a ledger of who owed what to the community.
Section 1. Temples and grain ledgers. The first banks. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to travel way back to the 3rd millennium BC in Mesopotamia, specifically ancient Sumer and Babylon. Let's walk through exactly how these ancient systems operated. The massive temples and palaces of the ancient Near East basically functioned as the world's very first banks. Here's how it worked. Step 1. These temples accumulated massive amounts of tribute from the population, mostly in the form of grain and livestock. Step 2. To manage this giant influx of stuff coming in and going out, temple administrators had to standardize a unit of account. They desperately needed a way to measure and equate all these different types of goods. And then step 3, the temples acted as a neutral witness. They recorded debts, interest, and deposits on clay tablets. So they weren't using coins at all. They were using these highly sophisticated credit ledgers. And this system was incredibly precise. Take the number 180. The famous Babylonian shekel, which you've probably heard of, didn't actually start out as a silver coin you carried around in your pocket. No way. Remarkably, it originated as exactly 180 grains of barley. Why? Because the public institutions established their key monetary pivot by making the shekel weight perfectly equivalent to a standard monthly consumption unit of barley. They standardized the measure of a debt based on a tangible, everyday resource. They basically created a highly concrete unit of account that honestly had nothing to do with people casually trading in a marketplace.
And this system? It was wildly successful. Just look at how this core Babylonian accounting system, using the talent, the mina, and the shekel, spread like wildfire and dominated across the entire Near East. From the Hittites to the Hebrews, all these different civilizations adopted this exact same sexagesimal weight system just to measure obligations and debts. It was an administrative technology of accounting that proved so incredibly useful, it essentially birthed the very concept of money for vast swaths of human civilization.
Section 2. Money is an IOU. Okay, so here is the absolute crucial paradigm shift. Money is not, fundamentally, a physical thing with intrinsic value. It just isn't. Instead, it is a social unit of account used to measure obligations and represent resources within a collective. Think of it as a mechanism established by an authority just to track who owes what to whom. When you hold money in your hand, you are essentially holding a universally recognized IOU. It's a standardized record of a debt that the broader society just agrees to honor.
The unit of account actually arises when a central stakeholder, like, say, a king, a temple, or even a modern state, takes an in-kind service owed by an individual and marks it with a token. Basically, money is engineered on a fiscal frame. It's simply a way for an authority to standardize an advance of resources. So, the physical token itself, that's really just the receipt. The real money is the social relationship and the obligation that receipt represents. Once you realize that money is literally just a unit of account for debt, well, history suddenly makes a whole lot more sense.
Just look at these strange money things issued by states over the centuries. I mean, we've seen clay tablets in Babylon, base metal and leather coins, paper certificates pioneered in China during the Song dynasty, and, wait for it, perhaps most surprisingly, hazelwood tally sticks. The physical material of these items, it didn't matter one bit. The only thing that mattered was that the central authority accepted these items as a valid representation of a clear debt.
Which brings us to Section 3, Tally Sticks and Taxes.
It sounds completely unbelievable, right? But for a huge chunk of Europe's history, the state's money was quite literally a piece of wood. Seriously. You have to forget all that romantic imagery of treasure chests overflowing with gold and silver coins. In medieval England, the state heavily utilized split pieces of hazelwood as state-issued credit.
The historical researcher Aim Mitchell Innes actually hit the nail on the head when he noted that the regular method used by the government for paying a creditor was by raising a tally, giving to the creditor as an acknowledgement of indebtedness a wooden tally. So, picture this. The king would buy supplies or pay his soldiers, and instead of handing over gold, the exchequer would take a piece of wood, notch it, split it right down the middle, give half to the creditor, and keep the other half. That wooden stick was literally an official IOU from the crown, and it circulated as actual money.
But that begs a pretty huge question. Why on earth would anyone accept a random piece of wood as payment? I mean, if I try to buy groceries today with a twig I found out in my yard, I'm definitely going to be asked to leave the store. So how in the world did this system survive and thrive for centuries as a reliable medium of exchange?
Here is the answer. And honestly, this is the ultimate aha moment of this whole explainer, because it pays your taxes. Governments force their populations into debt by levying taxes, and then they get to dictate exactly what token will be accepted to cancel that tax debt. The English crown essentially said, hey, we will accept these specific wooden tally sticks as payment for the taxes you owe us. And boom, instantly, those sticks gained immense value. People would trade real hard goods and services for those sticks simply because they absolutely needed them to stay out of trouble with the tax collector. It's the taxes that drive the value of fiat money.
Section 4. The reality of modern money. Now, even when societies did use precious metals later on, the underlying logic never actually changed. For example, looking at medieval minting, when people bought money from the mint, they were putting up raw silver just to have it stamped into an official coin. But why bother? Well, because they were essentially just converting their silver into a taxable form recognized by the state. The coin was actually worth more than the raw silver, because that specific coin offered the cash service of being able to extinguish a tax debt with the sovereign. So the metal was really just the vehicle. The state's fiscal framework was the engine driving the whole thing.
Which brings us to our final, and I think most provocative question. I want you to pull out your phone and look at your digital bank balance today. Is it really fundamentally any different than a Babylonian clay ledger or a medieval wooden stick? The form has certainly changed, right? We've gone from barley to clay to wood to paper and now to pixels. But the substance? All money remains fundamentally a ledger of social obligation and debt. It is enforced and given value by a central authority that demands it back in taxes. It's this beautifully complex social illusion that you and I participate in every single day. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it completely changed how you look at the world, and I'll catch you next time.